Hi then guys, my name is Diarmaid Hegarty. I am the Clinical Director here at Resync Physiotherapy. Thank you very much for purchasing this post-pregnancy return to running program. We're going to try and guide you through this as much as we can, and we encourage you to ask a lot of questions when you're going through the program. So first of all, the program looks a little bit daunting. Yes, it seems like there's a lot of sections in it, but we want you to break that down into the 4 different runs that we have each week. So what happens is that you'll have the 4 runs, and you'll do them maybe once a week depending on your fitness level. If you want to do 2 of them a week, that's fine. You want to do 3 of them a week, but you must go through it day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, because it's a progressive program. That's what we want. Every time when you look at the program, every time there's a black line that goes through it and changes into another block, that block is going to be harder than the previous block, and that's why you have to go through it individually. So why did we design it this way? Well, ultimately what we found when people were coming into the clinic, especially post-pregnancy women, was that they went back running and they just did their constant speed and they started to get a little bit better, and that's absolutely fine, but you're missing a massive amount of strength characteristics that your body's going to need in the future. When your kids start to run around place, you'll have to chase around after them. So with the slower programs, what happens is that you run quite slow and you're using what we call your oxygen system. So your body has 3 different energy systems. It uses oxygen, carbohydrates, and then it also uses what we call your ATP, which is your basically your fuel, like your petrol or your diesel. And what happens is that with your oxygen system, the oxygen comes in, makes the fuel for your body and your muscle burns. That's the most efficient one, but that only works at slow levels. Now with the carbohydrates, that starts to produce produce energy, but it does it not as efficiently as oxygen, and it has a couple of byproducts that makes you get fatigued. But what happens is it starts to use that system as you start to run faster. So let's say like your 200-meter runner or your 400-meter runner, they're going to use mainly carbohydrates. And then what's finally there is your sprinter, where it's max effort. You're going as hard as you can. That's your ATP system, and sprinters like 60-meter sprinters, 100-meter sprinters start to use that system an awful lot. So the 3 energy systems combined, imagine you have 3 buckets hanging in front of you, all right, and you're a sprinter at the end of it in this bucket, and you use all that ATP. What happens is that carbohydrate system has to replenish that, and then your oxygen system has to replenish this bucket in front. So it goes, you're taking Rob and Peter to pay Paul to try and recover all those energy systems. Now if you run at a slow pace, it's this last bucket here that's just going to use all the energy, and then these other 2 are actually forgotten about unless you're running up a hill or you're doing interval training. And even at that, with the interval training, what we find with a lot of people is that they'll do the interval training, but they'll still run at a slower pace in order to get through the intervals, because they're not getting enough rest in between it. And that's what we call low intensity training. Whereas the high intensity training, that's operating at like 80 or 90 or 100% effort for a short period of time, and then a longer rest period. So if you're not doing that in your training, you're not really doing high intensity training, you're doing low intensity training, and it's all based on percentages. So like your steady state will be like maybe 40 to 50% effort, your low intensity training will be like 50 to maybe 75 or 80% training, and then your high intensity is anything above 80%, 85, 90. And what happens is that when you do the 90%, you pour out all the energy out of this bucket has to replace it, so your carbohydrates has to replace that, your oxygen has to replace the carbohydrates, and all the 3 energy systems work. Now what we do in the system is that we work all 3 systems on different days or on the same day, because you're getting a lot of rest periods. Now let's take the first day where you're running for 2 minutes and you're running relatively fast and you get a 1-minute break. Then what's going to happen is that you're running quite fast, so you're using your oxygen and your carbohydrate system because it's at a higher pace than you normally would have run at. But then what's happening is those systems start to recover each other then after that, and the more times you repeat that and try and hit the same distance on each run, then the more efficiently that system is going to replenish itself, and the more efficiently you're going to recover, and the more efficient your body is going to be able to deal with the byproducts of running that little bit faster. And ultimately it's going to improve that cardiovascular system. Neurologically, it's going to get those muscles, your hamstrings and your quads, or your hamstrings and your glutes to kick in faster, because you're running at a faster pace, which is what you don't get when you're running slower. Now inherently, and I've mentioned this in the book if you've read it, or in the PDF if you've read it, is that females are going to be quad dominant, and the reason for that is their pelvis turns as they're pregnant, because you have an awful lot more weight in the front to contend with. And when that turns in the front, then your quads get tighter and your glutes and your hamstrings are kind of lengthened and are not at the optimal position to fire. but we force you into a position where you're running faster and you're really striding, the shoulders are beginning to move, and you're getting that your foot is hitting the ground faster, and it has to produce force very, very quickly. Then all that system has to be worked quite we worked quite hard, and starts to work more as a system together. Then what we do, the key thing is that we give you an awful lot more rest in between the sets, and then you're able to contend with it. Now the first week you're going to get used to it. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to the program, and you're just kind of figuring out what your pace is going to be. And then the next week you start to push on. So if your goal is like a 3k personal best, or a 5k personal best, or even a 10k personal best, let's say you're at that level at this point, you're going to do this program for 3 or 4 weeks, and then what you can do is you can go back and you can try your 3-week 1 week you can try your 3-week your time trial, or 3-kilometer time trial, and then your 5-kilometer time trial, and then see your times are going to go they're going to go down, because your body's beginning to work more as a system. You're getting those energy levels, and you're getting those energy systems to be more efficient in what they're doing, because you're training with the interval at the high intensity. We're giving you the proper rest period. So that's generally the gist of the program. You will have some questions with us. Please ask any questions that you have with us. Get in touch with us, and best of luck with the program. Follow the key points we put in the PDF. You need to do a proper warm up. You need to do a recovery. It is a marathon, not a sprint. We'll get there in the end, but don't go balls out on the first run. You need to be able to hitting the same distance on each run. Thanks guys. Any problems, give us a buzz.